Danica was the one in this case who was attacking, they put out ads attacking her on being transgender and saying, wait, she's not really a woman, what does her birth certificate say, and all these sorts of things. And she's like, well, and she put out sort of a counter ad saying, yeah, I take hormone pills, like, this is who I am, but we're all humans at the end of the day. And I think, in this day and age, being human and having sort of that underlying message of empathy is something that is, clearly by last night, something that is really important and something that's really resonating with people who may be turned off by this sort of Trumpism and realize that you do need to go out and vote because bad things can happen.
And if you ask Danica, she says, like, I didn't like the traffic problem.
Yeah,
that's what.
There are issues, yeah.
And everyone in the area was like, it takes 2 hours to get to work. Yeah. And that is local politics. And you have a traffic problem. I know my commute to work was disturbed by a slight repainting of the lines. Mm-hmm. And there are all along, like, replace Bonin. You hate the traffic, replace Councilman Bonin. And so that is exactly the kind of stuff, and an amazing way to go at handling two huge things. One, the identity politics concept that everyone's talking about lately. And you had an 13-term incumbent who said, it's enough for me just to say that this person's a freak and this is my job.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And Danica said very tactfully, very effectively, like, okay, I am this person. This is who I am. Let's fix the traffic.
Yeah. She ran on traffic and Medicaid expansion. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I think in this particular instance, when you mentioned these former candidates who were also trans women, were not out, right? They weren't openly trans. They were outed, right? So then you have someone who is openly trans, right? And then her identity is still centered. So it's like there's no way around the identity politics being done. So she's like, let's galvanize people around these issues, right? Which is what we should be talking about.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think it's important that all of these issues were brought up. I also think, like, I'll mention again that at the core of this, I think representation is huge, right? When little kids can see that elected officials, regardless of whether they're facing any sort of bigotry or, trans children have, like, the highest suicide rate and things like that, seeing somebody sort of sidestep essentially all that sort of hateful rhetoric and bigotry and, unseat this incumbent is huge. And not to mention, congratulations, obviously, to all of the other, Democratic winners last night.
Right. There's also some sad but true things that are still at work that luckily went in the favor of the Democratic candidate. The fact that she was able to outraise 3-1 and have 3-1 that kind of money to spend. That doesn't happen all the time. Like, I still think the focus should be to try to get money out of politics, but it was important for people to in the system that we have go and find ways to donate to the candidates that you think can make a difference. I think that's important. I will point out the referendum in Maine is really, really important. That was a referendum on Medicaid expansion. So far, there had been kind of like a buffer between polls where you hear people say, like, yes, please expand Medicaid. We want more people to have access to health care. And then a bunch of legislative hurdles and this weird, we have a gerrymandered districts, which lead to Republican legislatures or a Republican governor who's able to have a better campaign and get the governorship. But we had a situation here where people said, no, here is a vote. We need to have Medicaid expansion, and the governor's still giving them crap about it, saying he's not going to make it happen until they can fund it. But this is one of those things where people are going to the polls and saying, we want this, make it happen.
Yeah, and that's huge, right? People going to the polls and making, like, first of all, voting in general, right? And being informed and voting and all of that stuff is so important. But there's so many of these stories, too, where you hear of, somebody was upset by a comment one of their lawmakers made, or they witnessed something, and so then they decided to run themselves. And I think that's important, too, for all of the young people who are watching to, one, vote, but two, like, you have the power, too, to run and make a change yourself. And I think that is a huge movement that we're seeing with young people, with progressives. And so I'm happy that we saw it in this election, and I'd like to see it in elections to come. All right, moving on. Mariah Carey has been accused of sexual harassment by her former security guard. Now, Now, Michael Anello, who is the CEO of Los Angeles-based Anello Security and Consulting, is actually threatening to sue Carrie for unpaid bills in excess of $220,000 for work undertaken between June 2015 and May 2017. Further, a draft lawsuit that was obtained by TMZ, prepared by Anello's lawyer, alleges sexual and verbal harassment, including calling him a skinhead, among other slurs. He alleges on one occasion she was wearing a sheer negligee, and Anello said that he tried to excuse himself, but Carrie insisted that he moved the luggage that he was moving at the time in her room, and then he left the room. So, obviously, these are all allegations that are happening right now, and I think in the midst of all of the Harvey Weinstein sort of fallout and all of these other famous people in Hollywood being, sort of brought down by sexual harassment, sexual abuse claims and allegations, this is adding to this with a little bit of a twist, right? Oftentimes, in a lot of these cases, we've seen women accusing men of these actions, and now this sort of flips the table. What do you guys think about this?
Finish it! Go for it. I feel like I jumped in like immediately.
No, go ahead.
If you're sexually harassing people, I think the accusation should come forward, and we should investigate and find out who it is, regardless of the gender of the person who's, perpetrating allegedly this sexual harassment.
Yeah, I think some of the claims are going to need to be a little bit more specific. Mariah Carey is always in a negligee. I've never not.
That was Tahiti Watcher music video.
Yeah, I've never not seen her almost naked. So, it's probably also the laziest sexual harassment that based on her performances. It's got to be really bad. But yeah, again, harassment of any form has to be taken seriously. Folks need to come forward. He needs to file this. So it can be further investigated.
Yes, I agree with you guys, right? Like, it's very important to recognize that sexual harassment and sexual abuse happens to men, too. And I think that is an important sort of nuance to a lot of the allegations that we're seeing in the media right now. That said, there's a lot going on here. He's unpaid. He is saying that she's racist. One of the things that he said was that she was racist because she wanted to be surrounded by black guys and not white people. First of all, reverse racism, not a thing. Okay, so that's like the first thing.
I never understand that. I don't understand what that means. Like, what does reverse racism, not a thing, mean?
Yeah, so when you were talking about like in ism, right? Okay, so like sexism, racism, whatever it is, you're looking at, and you can do a better job at this because you're a sociologist, but you're often looking at like the oppressor and oppressed historically. You're looking at historical context and things like that. And so when you look at that dynamic and the systemic problems, right, there's going to be individual biases and stereotypes and things like that. But when you're looking at it on a systemic level, you can't, like, the oppressed can't be racist or sexist against the oppressor.
But what if she's like, I hate white people because they're just inherently inferior to me, so I don't want them around.
Right, like I said, there can be sort of like an individual that can feel that way, but it's not like the whole racism because it's not a systemic problem.
I get what you're saying. I think those words, yeah, I get it. You have to take into consideration the historical legacy of oppression systems that have been happening since slavery, but it's like, if she's being racist toward white people, like, she can be racist toward white people, right? I can be, I as a Jew can be racist toward people who have oppressed me in the past.
Yeah, I think it's just the way we're using these terms.
Yeah.
And I think that's, we get caught up in how we, kind of semantics around these things. She's, displaying bigoted behavior. She's saying things that are racist. She may be discriminating in this particular case because it is the workplace.
Right.
Which I think gets problematic because you should exert some kind of control over who is hired. If you do have that issue, then why is it on display in these kind of interpersonal interactions when he's an assistant, a bodyguard?
Bodyguard, yes.
Right.
Okay, yeah. You exert some control over who is being hired. And not to say that she's not just openly discriminating by not actively hiring white people. I don't know. And I feel like her ethnicity is also kind of ambiguous, so this is all just kind of like an interesting case. In any light, I think all forms of discrimination or harassment need to be investigated and taken seriously. It's just a little nebulous here as to kind of what has happened. And I think that's why it's just a little tricky to kind of suss out.
Right, and in any crime, it seems like there's an act and an intent. There's a way that, you could be in a room with Mariah Carey and she's in revealing outfits and it's the stage, the Grammys. And there's one where she is in a revealing outfit and she is intentionally making you feel awkward and powerless when she's making you come in and take her luggage away, when you obviously have said that this makes you feel uncomfortable and it's not part of your job and it shouldn't be part of your job.
Right. No, and I agree with you. And there's other allegations that I read from different sources, one of which saying that she was partaking in sexual activity with somebody, and felt like she was making sure that he witnessed it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, I mean, you're also a security guard, and if you're standing outside of a room or standing outside of somewhere to protect somebody, I don't know where the lines are. I don't know. I don't know what happened, right? Because this is all just sort of coming out right now, and so I think there's a lot that we still need to look into. Yeah. That said, I think this is an important story because sexual harassment obviously can happen to men too, as we've seen in the Kevin Spacey allegations, and now potentially in the Mariah Carey allegation.
And I think it's interesting because it's another case, although not as clear, as how do you maintain professionalism in these informal professional spaces? And I think we've got to start to figure out how to carve out boundaries that are clear, because this isn't a formal office space, right? This is your security guard. So they do kind of traverse the boundaries of kind of interpersonal interactions, right? They are there when you're changing or possibly sleeping with someone. So then how do you define what harassment is?
It sounds like there's I guess it probably happens in Game of Thrones, but I remember there was a show called Rome where she's having sex and all her guards are standing around in a circle. That's what it seemed like, this archaic, terrifying, medieval situation. I will say that I am glad that Hollywood is changing. I was an assistant in a talent agency, and I always worked for really great people, but you would be on the phone, you just are listening into everyone's conversations in case you need to send a package or something, and then you see it, you hear it, just terrifying things happen on the phone, and you hear stories from other assistants working at other places, and I talked to various people throughout the industry, and they've said that times have changed.
Right.
They know that this is happening, and HR departments exist now, whereas before it was just the person who signed your check, and there wasn't a real fully developed HR department you could go to. And I heard of one story where it wasn't in my day, you'd hear these things about what are you wearing, kind of text going to assistants and whatnot, and saying really untoward, horrible things. And then I heard one story about someone who just sent one text that was more about where are you right now, which could be a bunch of things, but it was after hours, and as an assistant after hours, you'd always get called to go make a delivery at 8:30 p.m. on a essentially a Friday night. You just had to do it because that was part of your job. But the ambiguity there, they were both brought in and asked to hash it out and establish those boundaries, which is a very responsible step that just I don't remember exactly happening 15 years ago.
And I think that's really important to kind of piggyback off what you're saying and to address what you said, Ambria, is I do think that it's really important to really define what sexual harassment is, what sexual abuse is, and sexual assault and all of those things, because even though we shouldn't have to, we should know what this looks like, I think right now it does seem a little bit nebulous. We don't know how to do it in sort of different scenarios when it's the interpersonal and you have business sort of mixing, or you're doing late night deliveries and you don't know how to interpret text or whatever it may be. There is a lot, I think there's a lot of confusion. And even though maybe there shouldn't be, I still think that it exists. And so let's define it. You know what I mean? Break it down to this is every little thing right here is considered sexual harassment. This is sexual assault. This is sexual abuse. I think we really, really need to be very, very specific so that people, I don't think anybody except for some of the biggest offenders, I think people, like, if there's more, like, seemingly innocuous offenders, I think nobody really wants to be creepy, or nobody wants to be harassing and things like, I don't know. I think there's some people out there, but I think for, like, your everyday, sort of wink at the woman and things like that, I think if you are made clear, hey, that's sexual harassment, then maybe fewer people would do it. Yeah. I think. I hope. I
have the same, like, reaction. Like, I hear that, and I want to believe it so badly, but I think that entertainment is a specific kind of industry that you get into for the power and the coolness of it that a lot of people are drawn to for those reasons. There's all of the pure artists and the producers who are really in it to make amazing art, but there are also people that are there just to go to parties and get drunk and get chicks. Like, that instinct is still out there. And
I think that exists that starts in fraternities. I mean, that like,
very bratty.
That is a pervasive issue. It's not. There's many workplaces that are under fire now because the cocktail party got too out of control, and your boss came up and said something inappropriate, right? And that's just par for the course. It's like, and to your point, different people have different definitions of what they think sexual harassment or assault is, or they even base it on the kind of relationship that they think they have with their coworker, right? Like, we're cool, so I'm gonna say something wildly inappropriate because that's kind of like, actually, we still work together. There should be some boundaries. So it is a dicey issue. I think particularly things may change a little more in media because of the stigma around being outed, right? Like, I think that doesn't happen so much with, like, regular workplaces. Like, no one's wondering what FedEx is doing, but, like, some of these corporations or public figures, they're like, oh, you're harassing people? I'm not gonna watch House of Cards. Like, that makes a huge deal.
Similar to that, I talked to a producer who's been in the town for probably 30 years, and he said that he thinks it's because the insurance companies are like, we're not going to do settlements anymore.
Like, it's all about comfort.
People are getting better at it. The people who you've been able to scare into submission for so long are not as frightened anymore. They're going to tell on you, and they're going to have a good case because everything. Whereas before, it was a phone call that you overthink they made, a text message and an email that they can print out and show in court. And he's just like, for whatever reason, actually gets it to happen, even if it is the insurance company. It's a good thing.
So everybody has it. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Trump's tweets in China and what Trump is trying to do to the Grand King right now. So stick around and we'll see you this
We talk about TYT Army being so strong. Usually they help us run our show. Now they're going to help us run the country.
Like this.
It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people.
We had a huge victory for Wolfpack.
When Lincoln said this was a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations.
Our representatives don't represent us. Whoa! Democracy! United! We are too strong! There's thousands of volunteers, and you can be among them.
With Wolfpack, the mission is so clear.
Money is killing our democracy. 96% of Americans want it. When you get the power back, oh, that feels good. This is just the beginning. Let's go get them, man. Up and at them. Knock, knock. We're coming for them! Wolf-pack.com. I have decided that I'm going to get ripped. Okay? Okay?
Like, physically?
Yeah. Oh. What, you don't believe me?
I 100% don't believe you.
I will get so ripped, here's my prediction, that someone at PYT will say, Cenk, you've got to stop working out.
We're tired of you winning.
So you don't believe me?
Jake, you don't have time to do your daily duties for the main show.
I don't even have time for your daily duties. Because what you guys don't know is how great my muscles already are.
It's absolutely possible. But you can't have Leah run to the food truck to get you 2 different types of grilled cheeses with tater tots for lunch. You can't have that. You also have to go to the gym regularly.
All I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about it? Almost there.
What is going on, guys? Injustice Operation KOD here, bringing you guys another video from Injustice 2, and in this video we are going to be doing a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Easter egg in Injustice 2. Now, as you can see in the background, right where we are fighting, there is a giant tube-looking thing with a white glowing face in it. Now, most of you would have brushed it off and you're like, what the heck? It doesn't matter to me, whatever it is. But me, growing up watching Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, that to me looks like Zordon from the command center. I don't know if it was meant to be a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Easter egg, or if it was just put in there for visual effects and stuff and whatnot. But that 100% looks like Zordon's tube from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So, yeah. If you like more of these videos, make sure you hit the subscribe button below, make sure you like the video, make sure you comment, have a conversation with other subscribers, and everything like that. So, yeah, and there he goes, he's fine. So, see you guys in the next video. Peace out.
What's Wildcat been teaching you? What brings you to my kingdom? Looking for a man who talks to fish. I command them.
Scarab says you talk to fish.
That's a gross oversimplification.
But it sure fits easy on a bumper sticker.
System override. Authorization LK44.
Regional verification required. Identity confirmed. Standing down.
Brother I. Bring Geos in contact.
No monkey brains on the fish.
Back on the Young Turks, Hannah, Brett, and Ambria. So let's jump into some of these QIT live tweets. Bud Askin says, election results look like a true melting pot of American culture. Seems the good old boys system has taken a slap in the face. Hell yes. I am shocked says, I get that Democrats had a big win. Let's not spike the football too hard, even though it finally felt like a good night. I think that's a really, really great point, right? I think that we got this little notion of winning, and you get excited about that. I think you should be excited about that and use that as momentum to keep winning and to keep fighting. The fight's not over yet, guys.
Right.
We need to keep pushing and stay activated.
Act like you've been here, even though by definition you haven't yet.
Yeah. And respond to the issues. That's what voters voted for. They didn't vote according to party. They voted for candidates who responded to the traffic issues, right, to the things that respond to their particular context. So don't get ahead of yourselves. Just keep your ear to the ground and be responsible.
But also be excited.
Yes,
but also just a little bit. Do a little victory dance and then get back to marching. That's what I say.
Some of you dance, some of you don't.
All right, next story. Facebook is asking you to put your nudes into their database so that they can protect you from revenge porn. Because right now we seem to be in a climate where Facebook holds a lot of our trust. Now, basically what you do is you message yourself a picture of yourself naked, and it will store a fingerprint of images to prevent any copies of them being shared by disgruntled ex-lovers. Now, according to Facebook, they're not going to be storing any of the images. They're storing the link and using artificial intelligence and other photo matching technologies. Similar to when your boyfriend says, no, it's just for me. I'm not going to show anybody. Now, how Facebook got this AI actually comes from a scandal that they faced back in March. Now, in March, Facebook was embroiled in this scandal when it emerged that a 30,000-strong private members group called Marine United was routinely sharing images of nude women. Now, the group made up of U.S. Marines shared photographs of naked and semi-naked female colleagues. Now, in response to the revelations, Facebook introduced a feature that tagged pictures reported to it as revenge porn using photo matching technology, and it used this to prevent the image from spreading and closed down the majority of accounts reported to it as hosting such images. Now, they're going to release a trial of this new AI in Australia, where it actually is a big problem. Revenge is a big problem in Australia. 1 in 5 women aged 18 to 45 may have had some sort of image-based abuse. So they are trying to tackle that issue by asking you to send them nudes, essentially.
It's a trap. It is a total trap. It just sounds so creepy. Oh yeah. Just send it. Just send me. It's like when you go on a virus and you get the vaccine. You just introduce a little. Just send me a nude.
Like that voice. That's terrible.
Me Facebook. Me the activity.
Not the photo. It's the link. No, it's a link.
It's like someone pretending to be like a computer programmer who has only seen parts of CSI where they're hacking.
I worked, and then
I will crush you, Brainiac. You have no hope of victory. I need only strength. Your effort is wasted, Brainiac. My collection is without peer. Better to conquer than collect. Why come to this universe? Mine is collected. I will have yours. Its knowledge belongs to me. You are not me. I am Brainiac 6, your descendant. Prove my worthy heir. Abandon Earth, Brainiac. Who are you to command me? Your imperiled future. My double stands before me. It is the logical conclusion. Vivisection will confirm.
There's a door out there waiting for you, like this door.
What protections do we have?
I think the problem with Facebook right now is that it hasn't defined itself. right? Like they say that they're a social media platform, and so if they are a social media platform, maybe this makes somewhat sense, right? We're still gonna have problems with WhatsApp and Instagram and some of their other entities and things like that. But right now, I mean, it's kind of being argued that they're a media company. Would you send your nudes to a media company? I hope not.
And a lot
send them to my DMs, and I don't want those either.
You just assured yourself more.
Yeah, you did.
That's so sad. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. But a lot of these social media companies try, whenever sued, to hide behind a law that puts them kind of in the same category as a telephone company, where like if someone does something illegal through a telephone call, you don't sue the phone company just because they put up the wires. That's kind of how Facebook has and others have traditionally kind of insulated themselves from any legal consequences. I like the idea that they're trying to do something because they don't.
They need to be a little bit more proactive.
Legally have to, yeah, and it's one of those good try. I'm sure you guys got in a meeting and there were a lot of dry erase circles and lines of good ideas. And hopefully this is when you said it out loud, you also heard how ridiculous it was, even though, we all go to meetings and come out with these great ideas that don't really fly in the real pitch. This is one of them. It's weird that it's such a small, it's voluntary in a small group of people. Like, there should be a larger policy at play and higher consequences for offenders.
Yeah. That said, if you want to send nude photos to yourself in any other sort of message, just because you like your body, go, girl.
Be careful. Send it to me. Send it to me.
All right. Let's move on to another social media story. While in China, a country notorious for their firewall against sites like Facebook and Twitter, Trump has managed to send out some tweets. How? Well, apparently his administration says that he's using special equipment. All right, so Trump's team brought this special equipment to China that enables the president to get around the country's internet firewall. So this morning he sent out this tweet, as you can see here, thanking the president of China for their hospitality, while also slapping the president in the face because he was circumventing his laws. So a little bit ironic, and often in these sort of countries that do have firewalls, and specifically China, these sort of workarounds are illegal. So he is doing something that is illegal in a different country so that he can get his Twitter on. What did you guys think when you read this story?
Trying to remember it now that I see this DT phone home graphic, which is amazing. It's really disorienting and fantastic. I asked the engineers here, the IT people, like, what would you do? And they'd be like, VPN. And that's it. Like, this special equipment is just, I do a VPN. Silence.
Yeah. Yes. So, according to some articles that I read, it's basically he's using a U.S.-based service provider, which would allow him to circumvent some of the firewalls. And so, based off that information, some people who were sort of trying to guess what he was going to do when he was in China because of his penchant for tweeting, they thought maybe he would tweet while on Air Force One because they would have better access to that, not necessarily while he's walking around and hanging out in Beijing and things like that. But
you think he's going to stop doing his favorite thing? Just because this is his favorite part of being president.
Yes.
His favorite. He's not going to let a Chinese firewall or law stop him from being ridiculous. So he found the special equipment.
I just want to say, when he's in China, don't get any ideas, dude. Literally, don't get if you want to get one idea, get the, initiative toward clean energy idea, but don't get the, severely restricted internet that only allows people to access things that the folks in charge allow them to access. I don't want to open my Twitter in the morning and just be like, it's only Trump tweets.
Yeah.
Like, that is what he'd want.
That would never happen. It would be Trump and Fox and Friends.
Fox and Friends.
Those two.
That's not it. There's multiple friends. I can't even do a Donald Trump voice. There's multiple friends.
It's just generally
it's every there's everyone has 5 impressions. It's like Woody Allen, Christopher Walken, and George W. Bush. I do them all.
It's a douchebag cocktail.
Yeah. What's the matter with me, Donald Trump?
That's more.
All right. I think it's time to move on.
I do like when he got to the Forbidden City. He's like, they opened it just for me. Forbidden to everyone. Pulled some strings. Got in there. Forbidden City. Walls open to Trump.
Closer. See, it's ironic that somebody who wants to build a wall so much is trying to circumvent them.
So
a little ironic, just saying.
Of course, 10 million people also do this. 10 million people
Yes,
in China
of course.
also.
There's lots of people in China who get around some of the restrictive laws, which is good. Like, you should have free internet access, right? It's ridiculous that China does it. That said, when you go to a foreign country, especially as a leader of another country, I think you should be somewhat respectful of their laws.
I get it.
You are nothing without you.
I get it.
He's respectful nowhere. You remember the UN summit? You remember? He's not like, he can't.
True.
He also goes into these meetings and then is like, actually, they told me a few things that were kind of eye-opening. And then he changes his position completely after having a meeting with someone.
Yeah.
It's like, a lot of people didn't know this. You hear that? Like, a lot of people didn't know healthcare was difficult.
No, because somebody draws him a stick figure, like, infographic, and he's like, oh, now I know what you're talking about. Sorry, I was parroting Fox and Friends or Alex Jones or whoever. But once you get that, those pictures in front of him and you write his name in a bunch of places.
Right. Give him some crayons.
Yeah.
And crayons, not crayons. He uses crayons.
All right, let's jump into our next story here about Notre Dame. Just 1 week after Notre Dame announced to their employees and their students that they would no longer be offering contraception coverage because they would be taking advantage of the new healthcare rules put forth by the Trump administration, they're actually rolling back some of their statements, okay? Now, on October 27th, employees and graduate students at the prominent Catholic university were told via email that the school would no longer partake in an Obama-era federal program that provided separate coverage for women's health products or procedures that the university objects to based on its religious beliefs. Now, this program is set to halt for employees by the end of this calendar year and for students in mid-August of next year. Now, there was a lot of pushback, okay? There were students who created petitions, there were students who protest. 3 of Notre Dame students actually involved themselves in a pending lawsuit against the Trump administration over the new rules, and they filed that on behalf of them and the international nonprofit Medical Students for Choice by a clinic at Yale Law School. And so all of this sort of happened, right? They made this decision saying, we are not going to provide this for you anymore, which is something that they've actually been trying to fight for years. And now once the Trump administration sort of gave them the okay for any sort of institution that has a moral or religious obligation to contraceptive coverage, then they sort of took that and ran with it and sent this email, not really thinking about some of the consequences and the uprise that they would face from students and employees. Now, the latest email, which were sent to faculty on Tuesday morning, and the students later in the day, said that both student and faculty insurance companies intend to continue offering coverage for birth control with no copay, and that the university would not intervene. Now, I want to make it super clear, in this sort of case, the university doesn't have to provide them the birth care themselves, right? All they have to do is enable a third party to provide it for their students and for their employees. Now, what was really interesting when they made this decision last week is they said that if you need birth control for a medical condition, let's say something like PCOS or even acne or something like that, you can still get coverage for any form of birth control. But if you just want to use it for, preventative pregnancy measures, then you cannot. So it's really just this sort of blatant slut-shaming that they got called out for in a big way. And this, again, shows just the power that we have and students have when they stand up, when they protest, and when they speak out.
Yeah. I think this is the right thing to happen.
Yeah.
This is what happened. You hear all these stories about how religious organizations are going to start using that as a loophole not to have to provide coverage. But then you do it at a university where, they read and stuff, and people are smart, and you're going to get the graduate school to just show up en masse and say, no, that's not going to happen. Especially when people it's college. People are going to be sexually active. You're taking hormone balls, putting them right next to each other. They're going to have sex, and they want to be responsible about it. Let them be responsible about it, and don't do this weird. It is fittingly traditionally Catholic to do It's like super. We just be open and honest and communicate and let this happen.
One, thank God for grad students, right? As a grad student, like they read this, and it's like not only undergraduate students who probably don't even recognize that they have agency to affect change, right? So grad students come in who are, in a period of life, they're typically, older, doing family planning, right? So you can't strip people of birth control, and you certainly can't parse out, if you're doing it for acne, that's fine, or if you're doing it, it's like, what? Like, it's the same medicine. You're trying to restrict the function or how I use it? Don't do that.
Well, they also say that you can only use it if you have a medical condition. Pregnancy is a medical condition.
Right. Having the vagina is a medical condition that they're trying to tax originally.
Yeah.
This is a vag tax.
And I think it's really important to note, like, yes, it's amazing that these grad students and students in general, the students who signed the petition, the students who did the protest, were informed and spoke out about it. But also these two Notre Dame students who joined this lawsuit. I mean, having your name in a lawsuit like that, you can be, especially when you're at a private institution, you could be dragged. Like, you could face some serious consequences. And one of the students, I read a quote from her said, I feel really uncomfortable saying that I use this for anything other than pregnancy prevention. I'm going to be honest about that, and you should support me in that, because that helps me achieve equity, that helps me continue my education. If this is an educational institution, birth control allows me to continue my education and achieve my career goals that I want to achieve, and you should support me in that and not try to hamper that with these antiquated and stupid legislation, essentially.
And you have students who aren't Catholic who attend your university, so it's like you can't legislate morality on campus. It's ridiculous, and it puts students in a position where they do have to out these things that are very private.
Right. Yeah, it is something that is yes, oftentimes considered private, but I also think that it can be something that is not as stigmatized. Like, I think it's important to come forward and be like, oh no, I use, birth control for not having babies so that I can still have sex. Like, that's okay to say. Nothing wrong with it. Don't just, oh no, I use it for my acne. And if you do use it for your acne, great, that's good for you, but you can also use it to not have babies. That's still okay.
You can use it for all of those
things of that.
You don't want acne or a baby. You know what I mean? Like, it can be, I don't want either.
These are just the times when you just go, what year is it?
Yeah.
If this was 1992, I'd still be shocked if we're trying to take away birth control.
Yeah.
Like, this is 2017 now, and only for the next few months, and it's going to be 2018. How is this a thing? I think Notre Dame was real confident. They got their football team winning again. They're like, what else? What can we do now that we're on a roll? Take away birth control. And then people got it. But if they lose to Miami this weekend, they're going to take the birth control away again.
Yeah. I think, obviously I think this is great for the Notre Dame students and for the Notre Dame employees, but also I think this is important for students around the country who may feel powerless when these sorts of legislations are enacted on a nationwide level or a statewide level, or just from your university or whatever it may be, but you do have the power. I mean, look at these students who petitioned and protested. You do have the power to enact change, and really, really quickly. I mean, look at this was a week ago, and they enacted change within a week.
But I do understand where Notre Dame's coming from, because their whole religion is based on an unexpected pregnancy.
Oh,
just saying.
Oh, all right, guys, that is it for our show today. Stay tuned for the post game if you are a member. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.